Hello, everyone. Welcome to the May Recreational Astronomy Night meeting, online version of the Toronto Centre RASC. My name is Paul Markov, and I will be your virtual host for this evening. I hope you're doing well and have been able to take advantage of the excellent skies we've had recently. New moon skies at that. It's been wonderful. This is our second online Recreational Astronomy Night meeting, and I'd like to thank in advance our technical team comprised of Andrew and Betty Reed, Blake Nancarrow, Ward Legros, and Ennio Cellucci. Thank you for making these online presentations possible, guys. This evening, we have three speakers as usual, and they are Denis Gray, presenting the sky this month, Blake Nancarrow, how to share observations and photos online, I suppose, and Ron Macnaughton, the dance of Venus, the moon, and the sun. And as usual, our president, Chou, will close the meeting with a few announcements. If you have questions, you can ask them by entering them in the chat box just at the right of the video window on YouTube. And Ennio will ask the speaker the question on your behalf. And also, by the way, if you happen to be attending one of our meetings for the first time, whether you're a member or not, please chime in and just drop us a message on the chat line so we know we have some new viewers, listeners. So let's get the meeting started with Denis Gray and the sky this month, but give us a few seconds to get set up, and Denis will be right up. Denis is ready to go, I'm hearing. Okay, so over to you, Denis.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much, Paul. And thanks again also to the technical team. Really impressed with how well this is coming together and knowing a little bit about how much work is behind the scenes here to get all this working for everybody and looking and flowing like a smooth presentation. So the sky this month, I'm just going to cover a few things here and orient my cursor so it's in the right place and tell my computer to go forward. There we go. So as usual, I have each one of the people that does the sky this month, I notice has their own particular style and their own particular way of doing things. And I like to start with what I call the big picture, cover off some, and then cover off specific topics that are related to it. And the purpose of the sky this month, if you will, is to give everybody sort of things that they can look forward to, things that they can do, maybe some ideas for you to see and to challenge you a little bit in terms of getting out there and doing some observing. As Paul has said, we've had some excellent skies over the past couple of months, and I know I've been able to do more observing than I have been in quite a while, and it's encouraging, and hopefully it'll continue going for the rest of this year. So I'm going to be talking about some of the highlights this month. As it turns out, there's not that much going on up there this month, so there's actually less than some of that. And so I'm going to spend a few minutes and I'm going to diverge into a little bit of a talk about cometary information and how to get it for planning your observing runs and so forth. So let's get started. So the first news is, if you haven't heard it already, there was a big moment that was supposed to happen this afternoon. The Dragon capsule was the first, was supposed to be launched with real people going to the space station. So the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket has had a lot of successful cargo type flights, satellite launches, and so on. This was going to put some astronauts into orbit and have them hook up with the space station. Unfortunately, it was scrubbed due to weather, but it has been rescheduled to Saturday at 3:22 in the afternoon. One of the interesting tidbits that I picked up when I was looking at that was this is only the 5th time in the U.S. history that they've actually had a brand new rocket on the launch pad. So it's Mercury, Gemini, Apollo, and the Space Shuttle were the 4 prior to this one. So this is really kind of a milestone event. Hopefully everything's going to go really well on Saturday, and we're looking forward to that. So, the big picture, as usual, I like to start off with this picture, which comes from moonwise.co in the UK. But what the big picture here shows is essentially the whole things that are going on the ecliptic as we're going along. So starting on this side on the left, the sun is setting, and in the evening sky we have Gemini, hangover winter constellation still visible there. And then we get into the spring constellations. The moon in the middle of the month will be just outside of in Scorpius. And then our summer constellations and so forth are coming up. And then by the time we come to the next morning, the sun comes back again, and the sun is still roughly in the same location in the ecliptic, but it's obviously we've had a night that goes on in the middle there. So we're in the northern hemisphere, and a lot of these constellations should be familiar to many of us here. The other thing I always like to talk about a little bit is just where we are in terms of the annual journey around the sun. So right now we're here just before June, and as you can see, we're coming up to the solstice, which is the summer solstice when the sun stands still. It's the longest or the shortest night of the year, and it is essentially starting to slow down as we reach this sort of inflection point here in the summer. So you can see the total number of hours of night that we have tonight, 4 hours and 28 minutes. By June 21st, that'll be down to 3 hours and 48 minutes. So we're going to lose about a half an hour of night between now and then. And where we're going to lose it, we're going to lose a little bit of it in each one of these departments. So we're going to lose a little bit of time to more daylight. So we're going to have more time when the sun is up, an extra 20 minutes. We're going to have more time for civil twilight, 5 minutes, more time for nautical twilight here, another 5 minutes of nautical twilight, and another 10 minutes or so of astronomical twilight. And when you add all of those up, it makes our night, pure night time, the time that astrophotographers like the best, gets as short as it possibly can. So this suggests that a lot of the astronomy that we may be doing will be done not necessarily in full dark, because there's not that much nighttime left to work with, if you will, once we get past that. One of the other things that I like to sort of position ourselves with is in terms of where we are. If we look at the galaxy and think about where we are, we're out somewhere out on one of the outer arms of the Milky Way. And in the summertime, when we look towards the Milky Way, we're looking towards the central bulge of the galaxy. In the winter, when we're looking at the winter Milky Way as it goes through constellations like Orion and so forth, that's looking out. It's still a Milky Way there, but a lot less intense than the summer Milky Way. But now in the springtime, we're looking outside of the plane of the Milky Way when it gets dark. So we're not seeing the Milky Way very much at all. It's coming soon as we bend our way around in the Earth's orbit to get closer and closer to the summer. But right now we're looking outside. So there's less to see in terms of star clusters and so forth. There's still a few interesting ones to look at, but this is why it's galaxy season, because we're able to see outside of our own galaxy and look towards galaxies that are pointed in other areas. So when we look at the spring sky, you can see the ecliptic rolling along here. We've got two of the major galaxy-centric constellations, Leo the Lion, with that backwards question mark hook there, and the posterior marked off by 3 stars there. And the less notable constellation Virgo, which has got the star Spica in it. Spica is the star that really stands out, but the constellation is quite a large constellation. And in both of these constellations, we have a lot of galaxies. So this is the time of year when the galaxies are most prominent. And also there's some good galaxies in Coma Berenices up here as well. As we move forward in the year, of course, these are going to move along, and we're going to get into the summer constellations. And already we're starting to see those summer constellations become more prominent in the evening sky. So in terms of what's going on with the planets this month, so the first highlight is Mercury. So Mercury is actually in one of its more favorable apparitions for the year. And but Mercury, of course, in its 87 or so day orbit is very quick. So there's some good viewing for it in the evening sky between now and about mid-June. You need a good horizon for it, of course, and it's fairly bright. Venus is also making moves right now because of not necessarily because of its orbital speed, but because of where it is in its orbit. It's close to inferior conjunction, so it's passing us on the inside lane between Earth and the Sun, and as it does that, it comes vroom around the corner, and it's going to be shifting from the evening sky and showing up in the morning sky and start to rise rapidly as we go into June. Jupiter and Saturn are very close together right now. Jupiter is going to be lapping Saturn over the next couple of years. They're rising near midnight together, almost within 20 minutes of each other, very well placed in the morning sky. And this is actually a good opportunity if you're interested in getting planetary images of Jupiter and Saturn, is to set your alarm clock, get up early, and catch them in the morning sky when the air is generally more steady, so you'll get good seeing, and you'll have an opportunity to image them when they're near their best available height for this season. And the biggest one to talk about is Mars. So this month is when Mars Watch, quote unquote, kind of begins. There is a general rule of thumb, which is that we need about 10 degrees of diameter in an astronomical object like Mars for you to start to see good detail. You can look at it at any time, but when it's 4 degrees or something like that, very small, you just see basically an orange dot, and it's not really that useful. But now we're at the point where we're starting to see Mars is right around this here between May and June 12th. It's starting to show up, and the south polar cap is particularly noticeable. We're coming into the northern spring here, and over you can see between now and October, that south polar cap is going to change from a very noticeable white spot to an almost invisible white spot as it shrinks and all of the carbon dioxide sublimates into the atmosphere. The best observing is going to be in the morning time, as I noted before, but this is really quite exciting, and I think we'll be talking a lot about Mars over the next few months as we get closer and closer. Although it's not quite as large as it was the last time it came by in August of 2018, it's much higher. It's like 20 degrees higher in the sky in August, which means that it's way further out of the disturbance in the atmosphere. So it's going to be a lot clearer. Seeing will be better. So what you lose in a little bit of size of Mars, you're going to make up for with much better conditions and be able to see more detail on the planet and get better pictures if you choose to do that. So just in terms of some of the details of the timings here, so Mercury today, these times are all as of today, and they'll still change over the month, but Mercury is setting quite late. It's following the sun down, but it's going to be quite close to the horizon. Venus is still up there, dropping fast. It's going to be reaching inferior conjunction on June 3rd when it passes in front of the sun. And I think it's interesting for those of us who remember the Venus transit in 2012 and 2004, the transit of Venus was June 5th. And if Venus was reaching inferior conjunction on June 5th, we would have another transit of Venus. So it's missing by 2 days. So, and I think Ron may be talking about this in his talk, the repetitive cycles of Venus. So it's doing its 8-year repetitive cycle, and it's just missing a transit, and it's going to keep doing that for the next 120 years or so, unfortunately. Mars is rising at 2:17 in the morning, so it's going to only be best when you get up early. And as I mentioned, Jupiter and Saturn both around midnight. Neptune is up as well, but Uranus is really, really deep in the dawn twilight right now, so you're not going to have a good opportunity to see that. But now with planets, there's always a little bit of dancing going on. There's a few notable appulses. So we've got June 8th and 9th, Monday and Tuesday night. You'll find the waxing moon will be just below Jupiter and Saturn. So Jupiter and Saturn are close together, and the moon's going to cruise by them in June 8th and 9th, which will make for a nice striking group in the southern south, and it'll be available shortly after sunset. On June 12th, it's a Friday, Mars will be passing just above Neptune as we see it from here. So that's a telescopic view. You can have a look at Mars, and then if you just move your telescope up a little bit, you'll see Neptune as well. And then Friday at dawn, we're expecting a really nice conjunction of Venus and the moon. They're going to be quite close as seen from Toronto. There's actually, the moon is actually going to occult Venus from north of a line roughly of sort of James Bay to Newfoundland kind of area, like north and east of here. But it'll be very close for us, so it'll be very noticeable. The moon will be a very, very slender crescent, and Venus will be as well. So that's something to keep your eye on if you're able to get up early in the morning on that Friday. Just in terms of a few things about the moon this month. So the full moon is coming up June 5th. It's the so-called strawberry moon, which reminds us that strawberry shortcake season will be in soon. We have an interesting connection here, which is that the new moon and the summer solstice are coming together. They're within 6 hours of each other this year, which creates the rare summer sunstop moon, which I plan to go out and try to promote that and see if I can get everybody to talk about the summer sunstop moon. There's also at the same time an annular, not annual, if only, an annular eclipse in Asia. So that's a nice eclipse that's going to go over India, China, and a few other places near the equator. The moon is too far away to cover the entire sun, so it won't be as impressive, but there should be some interesting photographs to see about that. So as you can see, we have short nights, and there's not a lot of good planetary opportunities. Most of the planetary opportunities are in the morning. But there are a couple of opportunities. I wanted to try and come up with some things that people might enjoy doing. So we have this month some good opportunities to sort of see over the lunar pole. So as the graphic here illustrates, the moon is sort of does a little rocking motion in its orbit while it keeps the same face to us all the time. You can sometimes glimpse a little bit over the edge of the moon and see a little bit more of the lunar surface than you would expect. So we can see up to 59% of the moon's surface instead of just 50%. And this month we have two opportunities on June 14th at the third quarter and June 1st coming up when you can see either the southern limb of the moon or the northern limb. So the things that you might be able to spot there with a bit of research and so forth, the Leibnitz Mountains are poking up over the southern edge, near the south pole of the moon. And those are the edge, the visible edge of the South Polar Aitken Basin, which is the largest impact crater structure that we know about for sure. And most of it is hidden on the far side of the moon. The June 4th opportunity, there you may be able to spot the mountains, the peaks that are always up in sunlight. So there are a few mountains near the northern pole of the moon that are called the Peaks of Eternal Light, and they've been identified as a good opportunity potentially for human colonization, because all you would need to do is put some solar panels up on those mountains and you would have 24-hour power available to you for any kind of a future lunar base. So that's something that you might be interested in taking in. Now, I mentioned I was going to take a little bit of a detour and talk a little bit about comets. So one thing I came across in my research is this site called cobs.si. And let's see if we can get it to come up here again. Yeah, so this is the Comet Observation Database, COBS. So I came across this when I was looking for a good site to help identify good observing opportunities for comets. And one of the things I noticed is that there's a lot of amateurs participating on this site. One thing they're doing is they're doing light curve analyses of comets. So this one here, for example, is a light curve of comet Swan, which is one of the comets that is currently there. So, so essentially it peaked in, late April, early May, around magnitude 5, and it's falling off. Now people are saying it's around 9 or something like that. So that's potentially means it's well past its best before date as far as comets go, which is one of those things there. So that was interesting. But what was really interesting was that they offer a custom observing planner feature here, where you can put in your own latitude and longitude and coordinates, and what kinds of comets that what's your limiting magnitude, how good is your equipment, in other words. And it'll come back with a curated list of comets that you can see. So when I put in our coordinates here in Toronto, and I set a limiting magnitude of about 10 because I live downtown, and you need something pretty bright to punch through that mess. So I found that I would recommend 3 comets. Now, these 2 comets here are basically circumpolar, and they're not particularly observable because they're too close to the sun. However, this comet Pan-STARRS here, is currently magnitude 9, and it's saying, when it becomes available, when will it stop being available, what's the best time? So the best time to see it, the highest point, it is outside of the time I can see it, but it is certainly giving me a lot of information, what constellation it's in and so forth. And then you can click through to that particular comet and get more details on it, including what observers are doing and how it's coming along here. As I say, click through, click it like you mean it, Dennis. There we go. So you can see here that this comet appears to be still on the up, but it's relatively faint. So it's between 8th and 10th magnitude. So that would be probably a challenging observation, but potentially worthwhile. And based on what the database is telling me, this is our best opportunity would be for this comet. So where is Comet Pan-STARRS? So right now, Comet Pan-STARRS is actually pretty easy to find, relatively speaking. So it's hovering between the Big Dipper and the Little Dipper. So you can see here the pointer stars that point to Polaris. So it's roughly 25% of the way between the pointer stars and Polaris, and a little bit below that line there is Comet Pan-STARRS. So that's very high up after dark. It's 9th magnitude, so it probably would be a challenging observation. You probably might want to use a picture or a camera to get an image of that. But nevertheless, this is a useful resource, and I'm going to try and see if I can take advantage of it, particularly for other observable comets that may come into the Toronto area in the future. In terms of meteor activity, nothing. I'm sorry. There's just nothing going on. I looked everywhere. There's, there's maybe a meteor shower that didn't make it or something like that. But basically, there's nothing much to get excited about. That is all I have to say about meteors. How about that? Now, I mentioned galaxies and so other things, so let's just cover some of the good targets that there are. Galaxy season is still on. Now, obviously, the moon is starting to get in the way. We're heading towards a full moon on June 5th, so there's no time like the present if you want to do some galaxy hunting. Virgo is better. Leo is already starting to set, but some of these brighter galaxies may punch through. And as you can see, there's so many Messier galaxies all very close together that you're able to easily pick off a bunch of them. But it's important to get away from the city lights if you can. Find that unused parking lot deep in the dark parts of the suburban Toronto and see if you can spot some galaxies. Very useful. We also have a couple of open clusters. This time of year is not great for open clusters. There's not that many of them in the spring sky, but there's M44 in Cancer, which is still available as the sun sets. It's a classic wide open cluster. We've got M48 in Hydra, which is a bit of a challenge object as well. And there's also M67 is near M44, and if you've got good skies, you can see both. And M67 is kind of an older cluster. It's more dispersed, whereas M44 is a little bit younger, and there's a nice contrast there within the same area. The one thing that you can see at this time of year that's usually very rewarding are some of the better globular clusters that we have available. So M13, M92, M3, M53, all accessible in the north or east, and all of these are some of the best globular clusters that we have available. So I certainly recommend it. I've been looking at M13 and M92 myself. I found M3 from my backyard. I wasn't able to get to M53 because I haven't had a chance to bulldoze my neighbor's house, but I'll work on that. But they're all available, and they do punch through even city light pollution. They're often very accessible. In terms of the ISS predictions, there's good news and bad news. The good news is there's a few good passes coming up this week, but there's very few passes predicted after this week in June. So essentially, it's kind of like over the next few days, you should get out if you want to have a spot the ISS moment. Also makes for a good video and picture-taking opportunities. In terms of the pass on Friday, so I picked out this one here, courtesy Heavens Above. So this is Friday night around 10:30, magnitude minus 3.8, which is very bright. And as you can see, it's going to basically run right over the Big Dipper, possibly cream Polaris on its way through and eventually petering out in Ophiuchus. So this one looks very, very, beautiful in terms of this. It's practically 90 degrees up, which is a really, really nice one. Having said that, there's also a not bad one tonight. So you have a chance to get out there right now, or after the meeting, of course, 10:30. It's in the northeast. It's going to get as high as 40 degrees or so, and it's minus 2.6, which should be easy to pick out from everything else that's going on in the sky tonight. So, but after June 2nd, there aren't very many visible passes, which I found a little interesting. Probably something to do with orbital dynamics, but the Heavens Above website is the best resource for all of that stuff, and it is constantly updated with when the ISS boosts, and it's quite possible that when the Dragon capsule eventually gets there, there may be a boost involved with that, because that's usually what the servicing missions do. And when that happens, the orbits may change, and we may get a different set of passes. So it makes sense to always go back and check Heavens Above when you can. All right, and with that, I'm just going to show off a couple of my own pictures here. So I got a nice picture of the Crescent Venus, May 15th, and I also got it buzzing the Pleiades back in April. So I've had a chance to get my camera out and about. And I'll just hold off there for see if there are any questions coming through from the team.
All right, Dennis, thank you so much for your presentation. Great as usual. Dennis, thank you again. And I'll pass it over to Ennio to see if we have any online questions for Dennis.
Well, I have one question myself. Pardon me. With Mars and the apparition of Mars, is there any detail on the southern polar cap? Are we entering southern summer or northern summer? Any idea of how much it may grow or shrink over the apparition?
The picture, I think, has paints the picture says words. That's what I'm trying to say. The picture says words. So yeah, this is the predicted appearance of the polar southern polar cap over the next few months. So as you can see, here it is right about now. It's very prominent, and that's what it's going to look like by October. So over the next few months, it's going to shrink significantly. I don't have any better information than that right at my fingertips, but this is, I believe, northern summer coming into play.
Thank you.
Any more questions for Dennis? Dennis, I have a question myself.
Okay.
And maybe I missed it. You already touched on it, but you used the word a pulse. Is that synonymous to a conjunction?
It's synonymous, but it's more broad. So pulses cover conjunctions and occultations together, like any time two astronomical bodies get close together. So it's a little bit broader than a conjunction per se, and it covers. So I just threw that in there. I was doing a little research and I thought, wow, that's a cool word. I haven't used that one before, so I just threw it in there. But that's what it means, yeah.
Very good, thank you. Yes, I haven't heard that one in a long time. Any more questions, Ennio?
There are no more questions in the chat room at this moment.
Okay, very good. Thanks again, Dennis. So
all right,
give us a moment to get the next presentation set up. We'll be right back with our next speaker. Hello, we're back, and our next presenters is Blake Nancarrow, How to Share Observations and Photos. Take it away, Blake.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for having me tonight. Thanks everybody in YouTube for joining us. This is a redux of a presentation that I did for a small audience back in April 2015. And the topic is about sharing information, be it your astrophotographs. I'm focusing on astronomy, obviously, and maybe also sharing your words, maybe your astronomy observations, maybe discoveries, maybe software tips and tricks. And you could do that by blogging. So I want to talk about blogging sites and image gallery sites that you might use. I struggled a bit in preparing this. I have to be careful because I don't want this to come across as a pitch like everyone should be blogging and everyone should be sharing their photos. I know some people feel differently about that, but when I was thinking about a presentation topic, it seemed especially relevant now when we're not getting together as much and not seeing each other at the pub or the restaurant or at meetings or at the Carr Astronomical Observatory. Maybe this is a great opportunity for us to consider, again, sharing words and images. So why would you want to do this? Again, we're already doing it, I think, when we have gotten together at RASC meetings, when we have gotten together at the pub after the meeting, when we've met up at the observatory. People are doing it now on the forums, sharing some of their observations and their photos. We're already doing this. It's a human thing. Obviously, it's in our DNA that we like to share, especially with people that are interested in what we're doing. And again, maybe now more than ever, it's maybe relevant to consider doing this. So I want to talk a bit about sort of how and some of the popular sites that you can use to do this. So that's sort of the whole kind of pitch or angle here. So who might you do this for? Maybe I have to be careful how I ask this question, but are your family members and your best friends really that interested in your hobby? You know, I think they'll look at a photo and they'll say that's nice, and so on. But certainly when you get together with RASC members, when you get together with other amateur astronomers, you know, in the past when I went to Starfest, you know, we're all commiserating and sharing and stuff like that. So the astronomer community, obviously, there's a lot of interest there, and I'm interested in what you're doing. I'm interested in your photos. Many times when I look at photos, I'm greatly inspired by them. And sometimes I find them challenging. I think, boy, that's really good, and I wish I could do that, and I don't know how to do that, and I got to get better. So I think that's another thing that people might consider with this, that in sharing, it's helping you. It's helping sort of define what you're doing. You can learn to write better. You can produce better images, and so on over time. What might you share? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer for any of this. I'm emphasizing photos primarily in this, and there's lots of good photo sharing sites. So you might be wanting to share some photos to get some feedback, to show people what you're working on, and you might feel pretty chuffed about when you get a really good image and the processing works out well. Years ago, I decided that I wanted to have my observing notes with me or available no matter where I went, whether I took one of my computers or not. And the obvious thing to me was, well, I'll put them on the cloud. I'll put them on the internet. So I started using a blogging service there for my observing notes. I wasn't expecting anybody to read those. A regular civilian reading those, they're going to be pretty dry and boring and technical. Maybe some astronomers might find them interesting, but I didn't do it for that. I did it just for myself. I wanted to have my notes available 24/7 everywhere. So I use a blog site to keep all of my observing notes. And in fact, I don't really use an astronomy website for or a photo gallery website for my astronomy images. They all go onto the blog. All my photos, all my observing notes, all my sketches, all my citizen science work that I'm doing, and so on. It all goes into that one spot, one-stop shopping. And if you know me, you know I'm in the training industry. I'm a teacher. I'm always working on software, helping people learn software, getting better at it, and user manuals still are terrible. So I'm always trying to help people with workflows, learning tips and tricks in software, getting better, faster at software. I'm amazed at all the astrophotographers out there that have their videos online, video logging or vlogging, and their workflows. They share all that. So you could do all that if you want, or just as little as you want. I am sort of encouraging people to get your photos out there. And I think of fellow astronomers, the late Jeff Garrity. He put his observing notes online. And our host this evening, Paul Markov, he's a big advocate of logging. He has an article in the RASC Observer's Handbook encouraging you to do it. We always bug the new astronomer to do their logging. So for people starting out, it's good to develop that habit right away from the get-go. And I really enjoy going back to my old log notes and seeing what I've done and how I've progressed. Paul Markov has some of his log notes online as well. Now, I admit I get a little hot under the collar about this, pretty opinionated about this, but I really don't like large photographs being sent by email. I just don't think it's the right technology. It's the right way to do it. And as cameras get better and the sensors get bigger and we've got more megapixels, probably in the future, we're going to see this error message more and more that the image file, certainly videos, they're too large to send as an attachment. So I want to really emphasize something. Hopefully I don't sound too snooty about this, but stop using email to share your photos. Put them on the cloud, and in your email, put the link to the photo. That's a good way to do it. I'm also sensitive about internet bandwidth conservation, so that's just a really efficient sort of way to do that. Don't use Facebook as your primary storage place for astrophotos. There's some technical issues here. If you've put all this work into the data gathering for your photo, and you've done all this processing work, and then you put this photo to share it onto Facebook, it'll look terrible. And people looking at that photo will go, it's not that great, or there's a moire effect, or there's a really bad gradient, or it's pixelated. Even when they try to make it as large as possible. Again, the good thing to do is put it on a cloud service, and then link to it in your Facebook. Facebook will put a little thumbnail there, but then when people go follow the link, they'll see the full-size, high-resolution image. And then you can really showcase your work there. And arguably, things like Facebook and Twitter, they're great. I mean, don't get me wrong about in terms of social media, but don't make that your primary location for sharing images, because they're so temporary, they're fleeting, and heaven help you if you put up a photo onto one of these services, and then somebody a week or two later goes, I want to find that cool photo that Blake did. It'll be impossible for them to find it in Facebook or Twitter. Put your photos, put your blogs on the cloud, and then it's one-stop shopping. People can go to it anytime they want. It really is very efficient. Now, lots of people might go, oh, that's more work, and I got to use this different service and stuff like that. But I would argue, till the cows come home, that blogging and sharing photos is not very time consuming. It shouldn't take too much effort, and blogging isn't really any more difficult than composing an email with an attachment. When might you do this? How much might you put on your website? How many photos do you want to share? I don't have an answer here. That's really personal. That's really up to you. Jeff Garrity put every one of his observations online. And I don't know if you can see the number there, but he numbered every observation. So back in May 2016, that was his observation number 1,569. And that was a daytime observation. That's what the D means after that. So he had 15 observations on his blog, on the cloud. I've been using Blogger for, 10 years, and I've got all my observing notes there now. I've found my old ones and put them there too. So everything's there. It's in one spot. But you don't have to do that. And that's another aspect to Twitter, maybe, and Facebook, that there's a connotation that you should be extremely active, posting every day, posting every hour on Twitter. But on a blog site, I don't think there's that time connotation. You blog when you want, and people will have it in their bookmarks or their favorites, and they'll go look at it when they want. And you'll set the pace. You'll set the tone, and then people will learn that. What about cost? You can do all of this for free. Yay. And if you do spend money, I think you're maybe looking at $100 a year kind of thing. You don't have to spend a lot of money on this. And when you think about it, I can't remember how much money I spent on film and processing and duplication of photographs, but I'm not spending any of that now. I buy a memory card from time to time. Now I do use a domain name. I bought a domain name for my blog, but that's still $40 US a year. So we're not talking about a lot of money here. So you can do it for free or spend a little bit. It's up to you. So where can you use this? I've got lots of suggestions here. And I'll showcase a few examples for you, but by no means all. But just before I get into that, for those people online, maybe you can type into the YouTube chat channel. I'm curious if you're blogging, what tools you use, if you like it. And if you're using a photo website, what that is. So maybe you could share that while I'm showcasing a few here. And maybe you're using some of them, but maybe there's some I've never heard of that you're using. So I'm just curious about that. So one option is Google Photos. If you have a Gmail account, you have an Android phone, you're sort of good to go. You could start using Google Photos. Now, Google scans all those and harvests information out of them that might creep you out. Facebook's the same sort of way. But nevertheless, it's pretty accommodating. They'll allow unlimited photos. There's no limit now. Now, that's curtailed by the size of each photo and the quality of the video. You can do video too. But that's neat. You can have unlimited medium to medium high quality photos and video on Google. And it's got some automatic organizational capabilities. You can set up folders that automatically does a timeline and so on. It's got some sharing controls, so you can make things private only for friends and family, so that's good. It does automatic syncing too. So in general, you take a photo with your phone and it'll just show up in Google Photos. I don't like that feature myself. I'm trying to turn that off. If I take a picture of a photo of something at the grocery store, That's just for me. It doesn't make any sense. So again, good and bad things about this, but it's good to know that you have unlimited space there. If you're in the Apple ecosystem, you use iOS or Macintoshes. Apple's trying to make it really easily to do with iCloud. You can store your photos, your videos, document everything, in fact, apps, and they're all synchronized across all of your devices. So that's good. They try to make it really, really easy for everybody. You've got sharing controls. Again, now with iCloud, if I understand correctly, you get 5 gigabytes of space for free, which isn't a lot if you have high resolution stuff, but still that gets you going. You can start sharing things. You can have a curated gallery there, and you can buy more space. Peter Visma is one of our members that uses iCloud. Those are some of his photos. Flickr, you may have heard of. It's quite popular for photography in general, general purpose again. And a number of our members, Michael Watson, Brian Zarnick, Ian Donaldson, they all use Flickr. I've got a snapshot from Michael's webpage here when he went to Australia a couple of years ago. You can have 1,000 high resolution images and HD video with a free account. They're shown with ads. A lot of these websites do tagging. They allow commentary by visitors or by fellow members. Flickr has really good permission control and copyright controls. And in the end, though, they're just trying to help people share their photos with their friends and family and people who matter. So that's just how they're wired. So that's a good option to consider. A bit more sort of oriented for the professional photographer, the pro-am photographer, we have SmugMug, easy to upload things, unlimited storage, even with a basic account. Very good privacy and sharing controls. One of the things I like about SmugMug is you can set the background to black. On some of those astrophotography gallery sites, you can't control the background color or the profile or the theme, but SmugMug lets you do that. And I don't know why exactly, but astro photos just seem to look good when they're on a black background. You can try out SmugMug for free, so that's great. And the plan, an annual plan, is not that expensive, $50 US. So check that out. And then another oriented to pro-am website, and I believe 500 Pixels is in Toronto. It's a Toronto company. They also offer unlimited storage, similar price, similar sort of features here, and they help pro photographers assemble their portfolios to show to clients or prospective clients and so on. Alan Dyer uses 500 Pixels. So lots of good resources out there. But here's one I wanted you to know about and really consider using. If you're just getting started sharing astro photos, check out AstroBin. AstroBin is by photographers for photographers. It's purpose-built for astrophotography. When you upload a photo, they prompt you about the details of the photo, the telescope, the optical train, the camera that you use, the filter wheel, what exposure settings you use. They prompt you for all that. You can upload full high-resolution images. You can upload camera raw formats to AstroBin. Again, black background. They have a commentary system. Once you've uploaded enough of your work, you can start to comment on others, and they can comment on your work. They have the photo of the day or photo of the week kind of thing, so that's kind of nice. Lots of great sort of capabilities there. Steve McKinney uses it. David Brody has started using it. I have a profile there, but I've only put 2 or 3 photos on, so I haven't used it very much. Again, I'm putting everything in Blogger, so that's just me. But AstroBin, again, I think is really, really important here if you want to have really high quality astro photos that you can share with people, and then you want to provide the link to them, and you really want to showcase your work. That's a great tool to use. You can use it for free. There are paid services or a subscription fee to unlock additional capabilities. What about words? If you want to do some of those things I was talking about before, you want to share your observing notes, or you want to write product reviews, or you want to share tips and tricks, or you want to share your workflows, then look into some blogging websites. And perhaps the #1 blogging service on the planet is WordPress. Very easy to use. Again, I don't think any more difficult than using an email. You type in a subject line, you put some content in the body of it, you can upload pictures very easily. They have nice themes that you can choose from. You can enable commenting with it, so that's pretty good. This is an old snapshot of the Imaging Saturn page by Risa. So again, WordPress is probably the #1 site out there. I evaluated WordPress. I looked at Blogger, and I don't, that was many years ago. I don't remember my train of thought, but I just decided I liked the Blogger a little bit better. So I went that route. Obviously a Google product. It's free, completely free. I feel a little bit guilty. I have so many articles in my Blogger account, again, all for free. You can see the domain name up at the top though. So that part I paid for. But again, easy to use. A little feature I like is I upload a picture and it automatically makes it small, a thumbnail. And when people click on the picture, it expands out to a full size. And if I have several pictures in the same post, it does a little mini gallery. And I chose my theme, the black background. I did that myself. I use tagging extensively in it for cross-referencing to make it really easy to find stuff. So maybe check out Blogger if you want to do sharing of words and text or your citizen science results. So there's lots of other tools out there. This is just a short list of some of the other things. Obviously, you can easily share files and photos in OneDrive. Maybe you're deeply immersed and use a lot of the Microsoft products. There's all the regular generic things like Google Drive and Dropbox and so on. You can easily build websites these days. That used to be sort of programming and technical, but services like Google Sites and Wix make it really easy. And then you've got like tremendous control. You can make things look the way you want. When you use WordPress or Blogger, there's sort of a framework that you're working in, but it also means if you're not terribly technically inclined and you like their themes, then you're good to go. So that's nice. So just a little bit of cheerleading here. I encourage you to share your photos if you're not already doing it, or start sharing more. Again, at this time, we're kind of losing touch with each other a little bit, I think, and these services and social media allow us to keep in touch and follow what each other is doing. I don't know if you want to share your words and text and thoughts and so on, but there's good blogging sites to help you do that. So you can tell us about what you're working on, the research that you're doing. If you try out a new telescope or a new mount, you can talk about things that work or don't work, and you're helping other people. And I think this is a broad comment about logging in general, keeping your observing logs. You'll be able to see your progression with photographs. When you're getting some good constructive criticism, as you write more, you'll write better. So I hope you'll consider these sort of things, and I've given you some ideas of some sources, some tools that you can use. And again, you could start all this out and not spend any money. So that's cool. So thanks for your time. And I thank all the RASC members who either directly or indirectly provided their content. I took lots of snapshots there, and I'm very grateful for the Blogger service. I've used it for many years to capture all my astronomy related sort of notes and thoughts. And again, all my photos are there. Again, I thank you for your time. I don't know if there's any time for questions, or if there are any questions
Yes.
online. I'm happy to take those, and I've got my email address here. you'll have to sort of edit that, obviously, but feel free to email me if you have specific questions about blogging or photo sharing. And a bit of a shameless plug there for my blog. But I'll pause here to see if there's any questions.
Blake, thank you so much for a detailed presentation. Lots of great ideas on how to share photos and observations online. If I could make a comment before we go to questions, if you happen to be blogging about people other than yourself, please keep in mind their privacy if you're posting their photos or things about them, to get their permission, because some people don't like that, especially in this day and age.
Yeah, and that raises a good point too, that obviously we're not doing it right now, but in the past we've done photography at, say, our public events. So at those events, there might be people in the background, and kids in particular in the background. So normally, if you were with a news agency, you would get everybody's permission and stuff like that. So if you're sharing photos, maybe fuzz out the people, or just simply don't use them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So get their permission. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So let's go to Ennio. Any online questions for Blake?
Well, the big question that has just come up is about your blog's address, which is blog.lumpydarkness.com.
Yeah. So it's showing on my slide right there. If you type lumpydarkness.com by itself without the blog in front of it, it won't go anywhere. So you got to go to blog.lumpydarkness.com. And you'll see all the content there. I think I've gone over 10,000 articles or posts in my blog in the 10 or so years that I've been using that. So yeah, quite a while. And again, I put all my photos there. I forgot to mention something, that a lot of the blog tools also support evergreen. That is, if you had something like a technical guide, I for example, write kind of how-to things for software, the steps or the procedures to do in a certain version of software. So I don't like those to be in the blog, because then they fall off. Only the most recent articles show at the top. So if you have something that has some value over time, you want it to have some permanence and to be visible, you can use evergreen features. Both Blogger and WordPress support that. I never use that, though. I made my own website and I put my own evergreen content on that website. That's just because I know how to sort of program it and do it. But I have a companion site to my blog that has all my evergreen content on it there. That's just me being picky about making it easy to access certain things, and then other things are timely, and when they get old, they get old.
Any more questions, Anya?
None that I'm seeing at this moment. I happen to have one myself, however. Do you have any guidelines on picking blogs in terms of licensing of your images?
Yeah. So I know this has happened to some RASC members, that they have found their astrophotographs used in places like, say, I don't know, another website or a magazine or an e-zine or something like that, and they know it's their photo. Unmistakably, they know it's their photo, so it's improper use in some cases. Especially if it's something like a magazine where they're charging for the subscriptions and so on. So when you put your photos out there, when you put them on the cloud, to be frank, you're in harm's way. That is, people could take those photos unbeknownst to you without your permission. So that's not a good thing. And some people are really sort of sensitive about that. I can appreciate that. Now, there are things that you can do. For example, Flickr has very powerful controls. You can prevent, for example, the easy downloading of an image. Now that, if people are clever, they can still get around that. Even something simple like a screen snapshot. So it's we're betwixt and between. I'm encouraging you to share your photos, but here's a trick. Don't put the super duper highest possible resolution that would be used, say, for printing, high quality printing in a magazine where it's 1200 dots per inch. Put a low resolution photo online. And if you use a service like Flickr or SmugMug, you can say the high resolution photo is available for purchase. This brings up another matter, and that's just in general how copyright works. And I don't know if people are aware of it, but it's very clear in the Western world and certainly in North America. You could go to the appropriate website at the Canadian agency website, the copyright agency, and create copyrights for all of your work. But that's time consuming, it's expensive, but in theory you can do that. But if you understand the law and how copyright is widely accepted around the world, the moment you create something, you have copyright. So when you shoot a photo, you have copyright. That's just understood widely. And if you find your photo on some website and it was taken inappropriately, you have recourse. And if obviously you'll have the original files, you'll have the raw file, they'll be date stamped. So you can prove, might not be easy, but you can prove that you are the owner of that photo. And I know of some members that have found that, and then they've told the party, the offending party, please take that down, and that's been done. So I think it's a bit of a tricky issue there, but there's things that you can do. You can also do what's the word, stegography, where you hide information inside the photos. But a very very simple thing that you can do, it is just frame your work. People put frames and maybe some text, maybe the name of the object, and you put your name in the photo. Maybe you can put the copyright. You're free to put the circle and the C and the date to indicate copyright on your images. So a lot of people do that.
Okay, thank you, Blake. I think there are no more questions. So thanks again, Blake. Appreciate the time you put into the presentation.
You're welcome.
And let's take a short break while we get our next speaker set up. So we'll be right back. And we're back with Ron Macnaughton, our next speaker. He will talk to us about the dance of Venus, the Moon, and the Sun. Go ahead, Ron.
2020 will go down in history as a pretty important year. And I think there's an interesting little subplot in astronomy that I noticed when I was looking out my door and saw this site that was taken by Brian Koval. It was getting cloudy, so I didn't get my own picture. And what's surprising is this is after sunset, and you'll notice that Venus up above is to the right of the moon, when usually objects that are higher after sunset are to the left. So there's several factors involved here. One of them, look at the blow up of the previous photo and see how the horns of the moon are pointing almost upward. And that means the ecliptic is fairly steep. In contrast, this picture I took in September 2016, the moon, the thinner crescent moon, notice the horns are pointing almost horizontally, and you have a less steep ecliptic in the sunset in September. By the way, after I took this, I looked and I found that's Jupiter, and I can see several of the Galilean moons in the original photo. So in September, the ecliptic is relatively at low angle. I think a starry night doesn't quite show it as that steep, but in March, it's very steep. And that's one of the reasons that zodiacal light in the evening can be best photographed in March, because it's steeper and it gets higher up. And for reasons that are, I guess, a coincidence, the Pleiades are the top of the zodiacal light both in March and when you do a morning shot in September or October. Now, that's one factor in why the Venus is to the right of the moon. You also have the orbit. Now, the orbit of Venus is tilted compared to us by 3.4 degrees. And in March, we're about here. And Venus was a little earlier, but it's still well above the ecliptic in terms of being north. And that means that Venus is north of the ecliptic. And one of the things that got me going on this is a comment by, I think it's Eric Briggs, that every 8 years, Venus goes close to the Pleiades. And Denis showed his picture. It's 3.7 degrees away. And this is my effort, but it was awfully hard to get the details of the stars and the planet not too bright, but more skilled people can get it. And there's a third factor, and it involves the moon. Notice around this, there's the amazing pattern that is called the corona. And just to be up to date this year, that's the origin of the coronavirus word, because the pattern in micrographs looked a little bit like the solar corona in 1968 when they first identified that. So in December 26th, there was an eclipse of the sun. It was annular. And, sorry, I went forward. Now, there's also an eclipse on June 21st that's also annular, as Denis said, and a third one on the 13th of December, which is total in going through South America again. Now, let's look here at the what happens in an eclipse. Similarly, you have an angle between the moon's orbit and the Earth's orbit. And when the line of nodes line up pointing towards the sun, as the moon goes counterclockwise around the Earth, it is going to eclipse. And this is what makes it. But 3 months later, you have the same orbit of March, and this time the moon is well below the plane of the solar system. So you have a starry night version. You have Venus above the solar system or above the ecliptic. You have the moon below the ecliptic. I don't know why starry night makes it so big. And the ecliptic is steep. So that's why you had this unusual pattern of the higher solar system body being to the right. But there's more to the story. I think many people remember the transit of Venus on the 5th of June, 2012. I had about 200 people lined up to see through my telescopes. Unfortunately, 100 got to see it, and then clouds came, and I remember a girl was in tears when she realized she wasn't ever going to be able to see it. And I said, well, in something like 100 years, you might live then and see it then, although unfortunately it's in December then. So what happens is when Venus passes us, if there's a very narrow number of days around the 5th of June, Venus passes the Earth and on the inside, and it crosses the sun. So I'm going to show you a sequence every hour on the eclipse day. So this is 5 o'clock our time, 6 the transit started, 7. Then it got cloudy in Toronto and sunset, but it continued for a number of hours. Notice it goes downward compared to the ecliptic line, and that's the pattern for that eclipse. But on June 8th, 2004, 8 years earlier, I got up early in the morning, set up my telescope, looked at the transit, then dashed off to school when I was teaching. And in this transit, you have Venus going sloping downward, and again it goes downward. And actually, both eclipses are very parallel to each other. And the 2004 eclipse nicked the bottom of the sun. The 2012 eclipse, 8 years later, cut through the top of the sun. And guess what happens 8 more years later, i.e. on June the 3rd? It turns out this guy, Jan Moos, wrote a paper. It must have been before 1960, and I don't know if he could have used a computer to work out. He predicted all the inferior conjunctions of Venus, and the ones in yellow are when Venus is very close. And each one of these are 8 years apart, and this is 11 arc minutes from the center of the sun, which means that it is a transit. This is +9. And next June is +29, and I'll get to that in a sec. But notice every 5 Earth-Venus cycles over 8 years, you end up going a very small angle. Now, notice that in 2017, it's a very high plus angle. And I understand some people were able to see Venus all the way through, not in the same spot in the world, of course, but Venus was so far north of the sun that they could continually be seen in that time. And again, you get an 8-year cycle. So in 2025, we're going to have Venus is very far north of the sun, and in March, by the way, and we're going to have it. So on June 3rd, 2020, the Venus inferior conjunction is just a little before it would be crossing the sun. So it goes a little bit above, and then it plunges below. So now it's, for the rest of the cycle, it's below the Earth orbit. Starry Night shows it like this. It's just a little bit north. And I'm going to go back to Gord's picture, and I've added the black dot, but it could be somebody using the right wavelength is able to find radiation and take a picture and get a black dot there. And I think that will definitely get into the astronomy picture of the day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ron. Do we have any questions for Ron?
There are no questions that I can see in the chat room at this moment.
Okay. Very good. Thank you for the presentation, Ron. Very interesting on how the geometry works, and you explained that phenomenon that you raised at the beginning.
And it wasn't until I started to do this, I realized the origin of the coronavirus term.
All right, good. So that wraps up our speakers for this evening. If you give us a moment, we'll get set up for the announcements. All right, we're back, and we're going to wrap up tonight's meeting with the announcements delivered by Ralph Chou, our president.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I'll begin by, first of all, thanking our presenters, Denis, Blake, and Ron for their talks tonight. Thank you very much for taking the time to prepare those presentations and, giving us some more things to do over the next little while. Let's take a look now about what's coming up for the center. And our next Toronto Centre Online program is going to be on Wednesday night, 17th of June at 7:30 p.m. And that program will start off with Arnold Brody doing the sky this month. Blake's going to come back to talk about building a custom dew heater. And we do have one blank slot right now. So if anybody's interested in presenting, then please get in touch with Paul to let him know your interest in filling that last speaking slot. We've already got a lecture planned for September, and the problem right now is that we don't know when the Science Center is going to reopen. Because of the nature of the displays there, they've got a real problem with letting the public in and touching the displays and so on, particularly with transmission of the coronavirus. So Rachel was saying the other night that she feels that the Science Center will be among the last of the public institutions to reopen. That being said, Council is thinking about this. We had a meeting last night, and we discussed the situation, and we haven't made a final decision yet, but we are likely to see our meetings going into the summer and fall still be online. So having said that, we'll be planning at the moment that our speaker on the 30th of September will be doing a virtual presentation, and our speaker that night is Alicia Albertus, who is a PhD student at the U of T Department of Astronomy and Astrophysics. And we don't have a detailed title yet, but we know that she will be talking about exoplanets. So we'll have more about that later on in the summer, but please mark that date for the speaker night online. Okay. Most of you are aware that last night the government extended the state of emergency, and it is in effect now until at least the 9th of June. And that means that all of our education and public outreach activities are suspended until after the emergency situation is lifted. Again, because of the problems of coronavirus, we're not likely to resume our EPO activities, at least in the way that we've come to be used to seeing them, until we figured out what to do about preventing coronavirus transmission. So again, it's something that we're going to have to just play it by ear. It's going to be probably at least until phase 3 of the reopening plans of the government, and we'll keep you advised. And there will be stuff on the center's website, and we will also plan on sending out a MailChimp to let you know what is happening there. Similarly, our observing programs are suspended until we figure things out. I am aware that members are managing to find places to go, and they're meeting up with other members and so on, and that's great. It's just that we can't do anything organized for the public or do anything for more than 5 unrelated people and things like that under the current state of emergency. I'll remind you that RESC online has a lot of things going on. this National Online Speaker Series is going to continue into the future. One of the things the National Office has done is to ask each of the centers in the Society to arrange for one of their members to do a presentation on behalf of the center. And we do have somebody who has volunteered to do that. And so we're going to be letting them know who that person is very shortly. And in addition to that, let me remind you that on Sunday, June 7th, we have the Society's annual meeting of members that will be virtual to take a look at the finances and at the activities that have gone on at national level. And of course, this will be the first of the annual meetings with our new executive director, Phil Groff. And Phil is actually a member of this center, so he may even be listening tonight. I don't know. He may be online watching us. But in any case, we've got lots of stuff that's going on involving Toronto Centre members with the Society's online services. First Light is a program for new members, and that's suspended until the Science Centre reopens. So that's going to take a while before we see that come back for those people who were in that program at the time of the shutdown. The council has been talking about, again, looking at when we can bring the CAO back to operating under the new conditions. We've been sending a couple of people up to the property since the road reopened to cut the grass and make sure everything's in good working order. Our big problem now is to figure out how to apply social distancing and, again, allow people to use the facility without potentially spreading the virus around. So council's still working on this, and we will have an announcement in due course. But again, because of the uncertainties, all education and outreach, as well as observing activity, is suspended at the CAO until we've got the clearance to go ahead with that. But again, we'll let you know as soon as we can what is going on there. And basically, that's it for now. We're going to have some more stuff with the DDO online speaker program over the next couple of months. Watch out for announcements there on our website. And again, as we come up with decisions over our various activities, I'll be in touch with you by MailChimp and on the email forum to let you know what is going on. So for those of you who do have internet access and have not yet enrolled in the forum, please make sure that you log on there and take a look at what is going on. Join up on the forum and participate, but also watch out for the announcements, because that's our main way of communicating right now. MailChimp gets a little bit messy to do, and actually we do need some help with MailChimp, because some of our volunteers who used to do that for us have stepped aside. So if anybody knows MailChimp well and can help us with setting up some mailing lists and so on, we'd really appreciate that. Please get in touch with me about that. So anyway, we'll see you in mid-June. Enjoy the warmer weather and the clear skies. Be safe, stay healthy, and we'll see you at the next online session. Good night, everybody. Take care.